Okay guys, since most of us are pretty hard-headed and don't like reading instructions, I'm going to try to give a little video instructions to my new single stage nitrous progressive. I'm going to start out with the wiring diagram. As you see, whenever I sell this controller, it's going to come with my single stage wiring board. I know all this looks messy on the test bench, but that's just the way it is. So it's going to come with that to make the wiring a lot easier. And as you see on the wiring diagram, pretty simple. There's where your 12-volt arm switch is, which sends power to the controller. Your throttle switch. Your trans brake wire, which would connect into the wire that goes from your trans brake button to your trans brake solenoid. So you'd have to splice into that somewhere. And you see how the nitrous solenoids are hooked up. The single stage board supplies the 12-volt power to the solenoids, and the controller controls the ground part of it. I've got a built-in timer in the controller, and that's the gray wire there. It's a ground output that can handle up to 2 amps of power, and you would hook this generally to a relay to trigger something. And in the programming of it, you can program time on and time off for that output. And you see on here I've got going to the retards here. So what this is going to do, this would send 12 volts anytime that you went full throttle and it activated this board and sent the 12 volts out. Now if for some reason, if you're delaying the progressive from turning on the nitrous solenoids, you may not want to use this method, because this would pull retard as soon as you went wide open throttle and let off the trans brake. You know, an alternative to that would be to use the timer output. Of course, you'd have to go through a relay to get your 12-volt signal that would normally go to your retard, like on your MSD box, and then you could actually program this timer output to work your retard. So that's just an option there. But the wiring, it's about as simple as it gets. And I'm going to go into the programming of the box now. That's your main screen. That's going to show your live time, your either your live percentage or your start percentage. As of right now, you see that it's 20%, and you see the bar graph. It's actually a live bar graph. It'll move. So what that's telling me is I've got my program set where the first stage is 20%. Now on the main screen, none of these buttons will do anything but the mode. So you hit mode. Right here you can configure your hertz, which is how many times per second your solenoids will click. And that's kind of tunable. Different solenoids respond to different numbers there. 15 seems to be kind of an average number to try. Alright, you got your timer on, so you can set it at what time you'd want that timer output to come on. And this is all that it controls, is that gray wire. It doesn't have anything to do with the progressing. And then the time off. And you see, if you go below time on, it'll go straight to 0. So what that means, if it's set on 0 on timer off, then that means that it won't turn off unless you let off the throttle. So that's just a way to kind of override that. Hit enter, and here's where you'd set up the progressive stages. You see, I've actually got 3 different ramps that you can program in, which you don't have to use the second and third one. That's just optional if you want to really get real technical with it. And mode just gets you through everything. So right there you can set what time you want it to start, which most of the time you're going to be at 0, because most of the time you're going to want it to start right on the starting line. That's the percentage it would be on. That's the end time, whenever you'd want it to be at 100, or at the end percentage. So at 2 seconds we're going to be at 100%. And when you get through with your programming, just hit enter and it'll program it. And I'm just going to run it through the cycle here. I'm going to push my trans brake button. Now it went full throttle, so nothing's happened yet. Let off. And that's pretty much it. What you notice on the solenoid, once it gets around 80%, it really, and that's the way most solenoids do. Once they get up to a high percentage, like around 80 and above, solenoids really can't respond real well, so a lot of times they'll go 100%. So you have to kind of play with that, see how your solenoids like. And it's the same way when you get down here in the low percentages, a lot of times solenoids won't respond. It's not because the controller's not doing it. The controller will be sending the right signal, but solenoids can only respond through a certain amount of percentage. If you start getting below that and get a small pulse width, the solenoids can't respond quick enough. So that's another thing to keep in mind. It's normally not a good idea to try to set your start percentage really low. I mean, 20 to 30% is generally a really good level to start. You start getting less than that, depending on your solenoids, they may not actually come on until a little bit of time goes by, so you'll have a delay in it. So always look to kind of start your percentages in the 20 to 30 range. And I'm trying to think of anything else. That's really about it. That kind of walks you through all the settings. Like I said again, mode, set those. So that's about as simple of a process as it gets.